Welcome to the last week of a series called Here I Am. I have been singing that little version of that song for the last 3 weeks. I'm excited to transition to Christmas music, and so it's going to be really good. I'll be singing Jingle Bells tonight. For all those that's now stuck in your head, you're welcome. Or walk around the Christmas tree, anybody? But we're in this series called Here I Am, and it's all about hearing the voice of God, because the truth is that can be sometimes a little confusing. We've had those people speak over us or say to us that God told me to tell you, or God told me. And when you hear someone say that, you wonder, like, how did he tell you? Like, was it audible? Did the voice come thundering out of the clouds? Did you hear it in the wind? Did you have something written in the letters of your refrigerator? Like, how did you hear God speak? Is a question that many people have asked. And each week we've kind of broken down this question through the story of Moses. And what we've learned is that a lot of times God is speaking, we just don't hear him. In week one, we kind of understood this progression that many times we approach God trying to get his attention. We yell out to him, "Do you hear me? Like, do you see what I'm going through? Like, are you seeing me? Like, I'm going through this. I need some help. Would you rescue me? Would you redeem me? Would you restore me? Would you give me what I want?" And we are calling out, crying out to God, wondering why he's not answering. And the truth is that he's not looking. Let me butcher that one all over again. The truth is we're trying to get his attention when what he wants is our attention. He wants us to slow down, pause, and listen. And so the outcome of week one was, could we spend 5 minutes of quiet space or quiet time? Probably in the morning, best time to do it when we're rested or recovered. But 5 minutes of just silence. And then we revealed what happens in part two of when we give ourselves some quiet space. All the things that have happened in our life, all of our life circumstances begin surfacing in our brain. In week two, we realized Moses is like in the presence of God. There's this bush burning and it's not consumed. He's like, oh my gosh, God's speaking. He's telling me to do something. And then Moses begins out of rehearsal, like out of a memory. He begins telling God of all the reasons why he can't do what God's asking him to do. Like, God's doing what he wanted him to do. He's speaking. He's making himself known. He's talking to him. But now all the past memories, the past hurts, the past fears, the past failures are running through his mind. But God, you can't use me. I've done this. But God, you would never do that because, I'm afraid this would hurt me. This could end my life, God. God, this could embarrass me. God, this could ruin the rest of my life. God, I could lose everything. He begins going through all of his reasons why God is wrong and he is right. Many of us, we've actually heard God speak, but our past, our present circumstances, situations are keeping us from acting upon what God is speaking because we can't forget all the things we've done, all the things we've seen or experienced. And so we're stuck in this kind of battle of just regurgitating, but God, you don't understand. But God, you wouldn't do this. But God, this could hurt. And many of us are stuck there. And the process in which we begin to move away from these two areas, where we actually give God some silence. We give him some of our attention. We give him just a moment to speak. The second part is being truthful and surrendering. Hey, God, I keep saying this. You can't use me because of what I've done. God, you'll never be able to use me because this is what I've experienced. God, you'll never be able to use me because I'm not far enough along. I didn't finish. I didn't complete. I'm not good enough. And we take those things and we say, hey, God, I keep saying this. I keep thinking this. Would you take this from me? Would you speak truth to this? So week one, we practice silence. Week two, we give God those lies. Week three, we're going to answer some big questions on God speaking. In my counseling, I hear like a theme of questions to people who are struggling when we're talking about hearing from God. And the questions are the phrases are around these kind of ideas. What is God's will for my life? Like, what does he really want from me? Am I doing what he wants or am I doing what I want? Or people ask questions like this: what's my purpose? Like, does he have a purpose for me? And that comes from a place of feeling like I have no purpose, that what I'm currently doing has no meaning, it's useless, it's not valuable. Or what I'm going through or what I'm experiencing or where I'm at is not good enough. God could never use this. This is, not what he has planned for me because this is not what I want. People struggle when it comes to God's will or his purpose for their life. And maybe that's you here today. Like, you're struggling with, I'm not where I should be, or I'm never going to be used by God, or if this is what God's doing in my life, gosh, this is not good. I don't want this. We struggle with purpose and will. And so I want to speak through the full life of Moses. The past couple weeks, we've kind of broken apart pieces where he's done this or experienced this. Today, we're going to walk through, and I just want you to see one thing. Like, God is always speaking. He's always working, and he doesn't waste anything. He's always speaking. He's always working, and he doesn't waste anything. In fact, what we see more in Moses' story than anywhere else is that God, in the very ordinary life of Moses, is working for extraordinary purposes. And maybe, just maybe, what you've experienced, your past, your present, what you're going through that you wish was gone or you wish you could forget, maybe, just maybe, God wants to take that ordinary fear, that ordinary pain, that stuff that you're like, this is just, you couldn't use this, God. Maybe he's like, hey, I want to use that. I have a purpose for that, and it's going to be extraordinary. So the story begins. We're going to jump in chapter 2 of the book of Exodus, and I'm reading a lot today, so just follow along. There'll be verses on the screen, some verses, and some I'll jump around because my brain chases some tangents occasionally. But verse 1 of chapter 2 says this: about this time, a man and a woman from the tribe of Levi got married. The woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She saw that he was a special baby and kept him hidden for 3 months. Isn't it amazing when we read this first part that she believes her son's special, so she hid him? I don't know about you, but I don't hide special things. I brag about them. I boast about them, right? I mean, it'd be like me coming in today wearing a Georgia jersey or something like that. You know, like too soon, right? For the Ford fans. But I brag. I'm like, hey, this is special. You know, this is something I want you to see. I got this. You see this? Last year, in like early October, I bought this Christmas decoration that I didn't tell my kids about. I was so excited because I was going to put it up one day when they were gone. And it's this massive like cloth banner Christmas thing that you attach to your garage door. I have a garage door that like opens and like bends up, you know, like you attach it and it can open and close still. I was so excited. I was going to put it on there one day when they came home. I mean, the first Christmas decoration was going to be up. I ordered it in early October. Guess when I got it? January. Yeah, completely missed Christmas. So now my kids know about it and I can't wait to put it up this year. But I was going to brag. I was going to show it off. I was so excited about that Christmas decoration, I was going to put it up for all to see. That's what you do when you have something special. But she hid her baby. Why would you keep your baby hidden if it's special? That causes us to investigate. In the first chapter, in the last verse, so in Exodus chapter 1, verse 22, it says these words: Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people: throw every newborn Hebrew boy into the Nile River, but you may let the girls live. You see, a lot had happened leading up to the birth of Moses. Let me just kind of walk you through a little bit of history. This man named Abraham had spoken to him by God that he was going to be the father of many nations. That Abraham had received a new covenant and that God was going to work through his family, that all would be saved, that all would know him, okay? And so Abraham, at that time, didn't have any kids, and they're like, God, we're old, we don't have kids. How am I going to be a father of many kids if I don't have a kid? And late in their life, they have a boy named Isaac. So Abraham has Isaac. Pretty cool stories there. I won't get into the details. Isaac has two sons, Jacob and Esau. God uses Jacob and loves Jacob. And through Jacob, he has sons, okay? And in fact, he has many sons. And his youngest son, or one of his youngest sons, his name's Joseph. Now, Joseph would be kind of deemed the runt of the family, okay? Like out of all these kids, he wasn't the strongest, tallest. He wasn't the biggest, boldest. In fact, he was probably the quietest, most disconnected, but his father loved him. Jacob loved Joseph, cared for him, provided for him, did all his sons, but he just loved him especially. And the other brothers did not like this. And so they devised a plan and sold their younger brother into slavery. Can you imagine this? Like, just for a moment, what in the world? That's crazy, right? Like, and if you think about this, God's working, okay? Like he's got this plan. You're like, how can how can you do this? Like you said, God, that, Isaac had a son later, and Isaac had these two boys, Jacob and Esau. Jacob you loved, but Esau you kind of hated, you despised. How could you do that, God? And then Jacob has these kids, and the kids conspire against Joseph and sell him to say, God, how could you use all this? This is broke. This is messed up. Joseph is in slavery, and while he's in slavery and in prison, he interprets this dream. Well, this guy remembers it one day, and Pharaoh has a dream, and Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dream. Well, Pharaoh recovers, restores Joseph from prison into the house of Pharaoh, into second command over all of Egypt, and things are just going great. And in fact, a famine hits, and it's impacting the world as they know it. And it causes the Hebrew nation of people to begin coming towards Egypt because they're looking for food. Well, lo and behold, the brothers who sold Joseph into slavery come into Egypt looking for food. Joseph recognizes, these are my brothers. And he had a choice. He could have been like, get out, which is probably what most of us would have been done. Like, how dare you ruin my life, let me ruin yours, right? But he doesn't. He has compassion, and he serves them, loves them, cares for them. And next thing you know, that they care for the whole nation of Israel. The Hebrew people are coming into the care of Egypt, okay? Awesome things are about to happen. But in this moment, like this is where the story that we kind of picked up on happens. In this moment, Joseph dies. That Pharaoh dies. And the Hebrew people are now in the land, the nation of Egypt, and they're growing rapidly. And the new Pharaoh is intimidated. He's insecure out of what's happening. And this people are growing so fast that they could eventually overtake them. And so out of his desire to control the population, he kills off a generation of boys. But this mom, she couldn't do it. There was something about this boy. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how any of them did it, but they were forced their lives. They'd probably lose their life and everything else. And so people did this, but she protected this one little boy. And she doesn't even name him. He's special, but she doesn't name him. The story continues in verse 3. But when she could no longer hide him, she made a basket made of papyrus reeds and waterproofed it with tar and pitch. I just want you to kind of pick up along the way. Like through the story I told you, generations, you see out of these little moments of ordinary, or maybe even things that are bad and shouldn't be happening, God is working. And there's this neat little tie right here that you just can't pass up. This mom who has this special baby who goes unnamed, which, we name our cars, right? Come on, Betsy, you name, is this special to you, right? My kids watch this show where they take care of livestock, or they're veterinarians, and they all tell you, people who raise animals to eat them, they don't name them, because if you name it, you can't eat it, right? It's hard. It's special to you if you name it. Well, she doesn't name this kid. Up in this moment, he's unnamed, but she cares about him. And she believes something about him, and so she does something. She puts him in a basket made of papyrus reeds and waterproofs it with tar and pitch. What's so interesting about this story is in Genesis 6, in verse 14, and I told you I would jump around. In Genesis 6:14, God tells this man named Noah, build a large boat from cypress wood and waterproof it with tar and pitch. God's like, okay, I'm going to rescue you. I'm going to redeem, I'm going to restore, I'm going to protect you. And here we are years later. And now his name is Moses, not yet, but eventually he's placed in this waterproof basket, still with tar and pitch, for God to restore, to save, to rescue his people. Sometimes we see these little moments where it might not be anything important, but God is working in those moments. He's working to take ordinary things and make them extraordinary. So she puts the baby in the basket and lays it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile River. The baby's sister then stood off at a distance, watching to see what would happen to him. Soon, verse 5, Pharaoh's daughter came out to bathe in the river. This is what they do. They didn't have showers, so they came to the river to bathe. It's ordinary. It's normal, right? It's what we do. We get up and we shower. You get up, you drink coffee. You get up and whatever you do, whatever's normal to you, they have this normal rhythm. They get up, she's bathing. It's nothing crazy. But while she's bathing, she notices something. Let's continue verse 5. When the princess saw the basket among the reeds, she's bathing, it says she sent her maid over to get it for her. Verse 6. When the princess opened it, she saw the baby. The little boy was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This must be one of the Hebrew children, she said. She knows what her father's order or decree was. Like, she knows what the law of Pharaoh has spoken. Kill baby boys that are Hebrew. And here she finds a Hebrew baby boy crying in a basket in the Nile River, and she has compassion for him in the midst of horrific situations. In the midst of things that mom was probably saying, God, how could you? Why would you make me surrender my baby? Why would you make me give up my baby? God's at work. He gave Pharaoh's daughter compassion over him. But the story gets better. You probably read this, but she opens it, sees the baby boy, finds out it's a Hebrew child. Then the baby's sister approaches the princess. Should I go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse this baby for you, she asked. Yes, do, the princess replied. So the girl went and called the baby's mother. Take this baby and nurse him for me, the princess told the baby's mom. I will pay you for the help. So the woman took her baby home and nursed him. Come on. Really? Like, the mom who was just giving up her child has her child back and is now being paid to care for him, to nurse him, to provide for him. But the story is not over. It says this in verse 10, later when the boy was older, his mother brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her own son. The princess named him Moses, for she explained, I lifted him out of water. I lifted him up. I drew him out. Like, there's some really big significance, especially in Old Testament when people were named. There was a name that was attached to what they wanted for you, what they believed to be true about you, what they were hoping for your life. And so Moses' name to be drawn up, to be drawn out. What was God preparing to do in Moses' life? Draw him out. He was going to set him apart and use him. In this life where someone can easily been like, why me, God? How could you? This is horrific. God was at work. He's always at work in the ordinary, making it extraordinary. The story isn't over. Okay, so many things are happening, but it says this in verse 11. Many years later, when Moses had grown up, he went out to visit his own people, the Hebrews, and he saw how hard they were forced to work. During his visit, he saw an Egyptian beating one of his fellow Hebrews. After looking in all directions to make sure that no one was watching, Moses killed the Egyptian. He murders him and hid the body in sand. We see something in Moses that's very interesting. We see this compassion and passion at the same time. Compassion for his people and how hard they were working. They were being treated as slaves. But we see this passion in him for justice. This wasn't fair or right, so he takes action and does something. Was what he did right? No. He murders a man. He kills him. What we see is a raw passion come out of him. Let me tell you something. I have acted out of raw passion many times, and it never leads to anything good. And there's things I've done in my life, I'm like, oh man, I'm fierce, and I'm excited, and I'm passionate. It's like, burn it all down, you know? Like, I get that way sometimes. You know, like, you like cross me, I'm like, I'll just ruin everything, you know? I get this raw passion out of me, but unbridled passion is dangerous. It becomes out of control, right? But we see something in Moses. We see this characteristic in him that he loves justice. He values treating fairly, being cared for. He has compassion. We see this in him. It's unbridled. And he makes the wrong choice, but it's a characteristic nonetheless. And the story continues. It says the next day in verse 13, Moses went out to visit his people again. He saw two Hebrew men fighting. Why are you beating up your friend? Moses said to the one who had started the fight. The man replies, who appointed you to be our prince and judge? Are you going to kill me as you killed that Egyptian yesterday? Moses realizes something he's been seeing. Moses was afraid, thinking everyone knows what I've done. Verse 15. And sure enough, Pharaoh heard what had happened and tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian. When Moses arrived in Midian, he sat down beside a well. What's so interesting about his life is that now he's filled with fear. let's just ask ourselves the question, have we ever been like Moses? Have we ever been controlled by fear? Fear does the same thing in everybody. It causes you to make irrational decisions. It causes you to run and hide, to retreat. It causes you to recluse or to close or shut down. Fear is not a good driver, something I've said 100 times. Fear causes us to do things that we know aren't rational. It causes us to run away. It causes us to do things that we usually later regret. And in this situation, fear for his life causes him to run. And the whole time he's probably asking, like, what is going on? I was born a Hebrew, placed in the Nile because I was supposed to be dead. Pharaoh raised me. Like, I've been raised by the king of Egypt who believes in a pantheon of gods. I've been raised in a house of royalty when I was born in poverty. And now I'm afraid for my life and I'm running, and now I'm in this land called Midian, and I'm just here sitting beside a well. Like, what is my purpose? Like, who am I? How did I get here? Are some of the questions that Moses was probably wrestling with. Have you ever felt that way before? In verse 16 it says this, now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters who came as usual to draw water and fill the water troughs for their father's flocks. But some other shepherds came and chased them away. So Moses jumped up and rescued the girls from the shepherds. Then he drew water for their flocks. When the girls returned to their father, I would say, I think Reuel, you say it. Their father, he asked, all right, I'm just kidding. Why are you back so soon today? They say these words, an Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. They answered, and then he drew water for us and water our flocks. Then where is he? Their father asked. Why did you leave him there and invite him to come eat with us? Moses finds himself in another situation where something stirs his passion. He sees these men acting like young boys, being stupid. And they start messing with the priest's daughters in a way that he felt was unjust, not right. So he stands up to protect them, to fight on their behalf. We see something is happening. His passion is now bridled. He doesn't go out and kill. He simply protects. Do you see how it's shifted? The first time his passion was stoked, he hurt somebody. The second time, he's now protecting somebody. Something is happening in the life of Moses. But this time it's not unseen. It's actually very much seen. A father hears of his daughter being protected, and he calls for this young man, come into my presence, eat with us. He gives one of his daughters as his now wife, gives him a job to take care of livestock. Moses is like crazy confused. What is happening? Who am I? But all the while, God is at work. You see, what's so significant about this story up until this moment is that God is using Moses' passion. He's using the place he's at and all the relationships around him to reveal his purpose. All the while, God is using everything. The good, the bad, the scary, the messy, the hurtful. He's using it. He's working. How many of us here today have gone through things in life where we're like, man, this is scary. This is bad. This is hurting. God, how could I ever get beyond this? How can I ever move past this? God, I'll never be able to forget this. God, how could you let this happen to me? How could you bring me all the way to this moment to let me lose everything? God, how could you allow, you see me, you know what I can do. Why would you let this happen? God, is this my purpose? Is this the kind of God you are? Like many of you have experienced stories just like this. Moses had every right to be asking these questions, to be feeling these feelings, to be afraid, to be confused. Who am I? Am I Hebrew? Am I Egyptian? Am I a Midianite? What's my purpose? I was poor and then wealthy, and now I've got livestock, and what am I doing? Who am I? What do you want from me, God? And it was in these moments that God showed up. Showed up at that burning bush that wasn't consumed. In week 2, maybe it was week 1. They're all getting blurry. We learned these 2 words. I think it was actually week 1. It was Sur and Ra'ah. When Moses notices this burning bush, he does something. He leaves what he is responsible for, which is the livestock. He turns away from his ought to, the thing that keeps him busy, that keeps him distracted, the thing that keeps his mind focused so he doesn't get lost in his thoughts of how did I get here? He just does what he normally does. How many of you have just gotten up and do what you do so that you don't have to face all the other stuff in your life? How many of us get distracted by busyness or consume ourselves with hobbies or keep ourselves inundated with a whole bunch of other things? Maybe we live through our kids so that we don't have to face or remember or deal with our past. Moses is doing that. He's just keeping busy. But something grabs his attention. And so he leaves his ought to, his responsibility, and turns and gives his attention to God. This burning bush that's not consumed. And God speaks. God shows up. Many of us here this morning have experienced moments like this, where all these things are happening, have happened. And we're like, God, where are you? Is this what you want from me? Is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this my purpose? And I want you to know this, that everything that you've experienced at this moment, everything that you've gone through, everything that you've endured is all useful to God. He doesn't waste anything. Nothing is wasted with God. So many of us take those experiences, those moments, those hurts, those fears, those failures, and we hide them. We tuck them away, never to be used by, never to be seen by, never to be talked about, hoping they'll disappear. When all the while God's like, hey, I've been working in that. Hey, I can use that. Hey, I'm in this. Many of us have actually had God working. He was doing something when we took what he was doing and we locked it away. We shoved it away. We hid it. And we're wondering, why aren't you doing anything, God? Where are you? Is this my purpose of you sitting here? And he's like, listen, I want to use your passion. I want to use your presence where you are right now. I want to use your relationships. I want to do something through you and for you, but you're not letting me. Paul is talking to a church in Ephesus, New Testament. We call them the Ephesians. And he says these words in Ephesians 2:10, he says, for we are God's masterpiece. We are God's workmanship. Have you ever messed with clay before? Oh man, it's amazing, okay? In high school was the last time I got experience. The teacher would give you a block, a 1 pound square of clay, and you put on the spin wheel and you put some water on it and you start just molding it and messing with it, And I could get it pretty I get a circle. I could get the rounded edges, and then you stick your thumb in the middle of it and start pulling it up. And you get out of balance one time and you will throw clay everywhere, okay? Literally, it'll sling it all over the place. And so then she'd cut that in half, start smaller. And next thing you know, I'd made a bowl, a loppy, ugly bowl. But it was mine. I created it and I loved it. It was so beautiful to me. Not useful, but beautiful, okay? It was my masterpiece. I'd poured time. I'd learned. I'd messed up, I'd failed, I'd squish and I'd start over. And then I'd mess up and I'd squish and I'd start. I had poured my effort and energy into making this bowl. And when it was done, it was a masterpiece. When God says we are his masterpiece, he said, listen, I'm taking everything. Every failure, every fear, every mess up, every moment where you doubted, every moment where you trusted, every moment where you were happy and excited, every moment you were filled with joy, every moment you were filled with fear, every moment you were believing that you were nothing or useless, every moment you believed that you were less than or that no one ever could use you, I use it all. And I've been building a masterpiece. I've been working things out in you. You've been learning and listening, and I've been changing, and I've been showing you, and you didn't see me, but I'm there. teaching, molding, shaping. You're my masterpiece. And I created you for a purpose, the verse goes on. He's created us anew in Christ Jesus so that we can do the good things that he planned for us to do long ago. We're sitting here going, God, how could you? Where are you? Do you see me? Do you know me? Is this what you had planned? Is this my purpose? What is my purpose, God? I feel like I'm useless. I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like you abandoned me, all these things. And God's like, listen, I'm working. I've been taking that and using it. I've been taking that and using it. That brokenness, I've been working on it. Everything up into this moment, I'm using. This morning, I want you to know that he's been working in your ordinary. And he wants it to be extraordinary. But we must make the next move. In Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, it says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Because your understanding is what you see right now. You can't see tomorrow or the next day or the next. You have no clue what tomorrow holds. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. What's so cool about this verse is who cares if God makes your path straight if you don't choose to walk? So many of us are missing the voice of God in our life because we won't allow him to use everything. We're holding on to control. It's mine. You can't make it better. You can't fix this, God. God, this will be embarrassing. This will hurt. God, this will make people leave me or run from me. And the longer that you keep it in your control, hidden under lock and key, hoping to never see it or experience it again, you won't see God work. Moses had to overcome his fear and approach Pharaoh. He was afraid for his life. He'll take my life. I'm a murderer in the eyes of Egypt. Pharaoh wants my life. And God's like, trust me. Just go. And so he does. And God does what God does. He protects. He provides. Moses had to step in front of those that he hurt and harmed and trust that God was for him and could use his past hurts and failures in the eyes of Pharaoh. And God worked. God moved. God used a mess up. God used a liar, a murderer. God used someone who was stricken with fear. God used someone who was overcome in their mind. You'll never be able to use me. I'm useless. Do you know what I've done? God used him. And as the story unfolds, God unleashes through Moses a series of plagues that reveal to the Hebrew people that God has heard them and protected them. The last plague is actually the most crazy one where they have a blood covering over their doorways so this angel of death doesn't take their children. God's like, listen, this is who I am, what I do. My blood covers you. This ordinary people are sensing an extraordinary God do things they didn't know possible. So listen, blood will be the one day that covers all things. It's a foreshadow, a foretelling of Jesus to come. Moses eventually takes the people out of Egypt and stands in front of a body of water where God splits it. He divides it and they walk on dry land. Why did this happen? Because Moses said, you have access. You can use me. I know what I've done. I know who I am, and they do too. But I choose to believe that you're bigger than my circumstance, my past, my hurts, my failures. God sees him do the unthinkable, the unforgettable, when he gives God access to everything. Many of us want to hear God. And I want you to know he's been speaking. He's been working the whole time. He has never once stopped. He's seen your hurt. He's been present in your fear. He has not forsaken or left you or forgotten you. No, he's present. And he will use all of it for his glory and your good. But you got to let him have it. You got to let him use it. You're his workmanship. You're his masterpiece. You're not worthless or useless or broken. You're not messed up or unusable. No, in fact, you're the exact opposite. He has poured time, his attention, his care, his love. Thoughtfully has he molded you into who you are. And he wants to use everything. There's just 3 thoughts I want to close with that will help you maybe walk away today and just see, okay, God, maybe you're in this. The first thing is this: what are you passionate about? Like, what stirs you? What gets you excited? What maybe surfaces frustration or anger? What reveals your emotions? What brings you passion? Listen, God used Moses' passion in this process. He even used his unbridled passion. He used everything. Like, passion is something that God wires into you. You don't just become passionate about things for a coincidence. It doesn't just happen, okay? God's a part of that. He's made you for such a time as this. You have a passion that he's created in you. What is it? Ask God. Maybe you've silenced it. Maybe you've pushed it away. What are you passionate about? Think about this question, this kind of funny question. Like, what do you deem the good old days? What made those days so good? If you could go back then and experience that, why? What was about that moment? Maybe God was in that, wiring you together, showing you this is who you are. Where's your passion? Number 2, where have you been placed? Where are you right now? What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? Like, why are you here? A couple weeks ago, I did a funeral for an incredible friend. And this friend battled ALS for 2 years. About halfway through the battle of ALS, she was on the phone one day, and she was getting some pretty bad news. And she was on hold, and her heart was hurting. She was frustrated. She was scared. And so she began doing something that's absolutely the most incredible thing I've heard. She begins making a list. In this moment of fear, of frustration, of doubt and worry, she was making a list of all the people that she had met because of ALS. She began writing, I met this person, met this doctor, met this friend, met this nurse, met this family. And what she realized is that because she had ALS, she was able to meet these people. That if she wouldn't have ALS, she wouldn't have been in those areas or those circumstances. Like, she realized, God, you can take me places that I couldn't naturally go without this. She saw something that was horrific. She saw something that was a death sentence. And yet she chose to allow God to use it. Where's God placed you? You might hate it. You might despise it. But with your wiring, with your passions, with your giftings, God's placed you there. And he wants to use you, even in the midst of the worst circumstances. Hey, I've got you in this place because no one else would. No one else would stay here. No one else would put up with this. But you're there because you have a purpose. Instead of saying, God, why me? Instead of saying, God, how could you? Maybe we should start saying, hey, God, what do you want to do? How do you want to use me? I'm going to walk, God, you make this path straight. The third thing is this. Do you have relationships in your life that need Jesus? Do you have relationships in your life? Are there people around you that need Jesus? Listen, if you want to know your purpose in life, it's really quickly, easily answered by this. Is there someone around you that does not know Jesus? That's your ministry. That's your placement. That's your purpose. God will use your passions. He will use your location, and he will always use it for his glory and your good, his glory to be made known to those who do not know him. If you can answer these three questions, I want you to know that you're in a place that God has prepared for you to be used by him. He wants to use you. Let go of what you're holding on to. The past circumstances, situations, hurts and failures, successes, all of it. Current feelings, he'll use all of that for his glory and your good. Give him access to it. You never know who around you needs it, but he'll use it. He'll always use it. Don't hold on to it. Let it go. Trust him and see what he does. I believe if we do these things, I believe if we'll take some time to be silent, I believe if we'll offer him our fears and our failures, if we'll say to him, hey, I don't know how you're going to use this, but this is going on in my mind. This is keeping me from hearing you. And if you will just give him the opportunity to use it, he'll take your ordinary life and do extraordinary things through it. And you will see, you will hear, you will know that God has you right where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to do. Are you listening? Are you looking? He says, seek me, and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart. Run to him. Ask him, God, how do you want to use me? And I promise you this, he will. Let me pray for you. Jesus, thanks for the day. Thanks for this moment. Thanks for these stories that can sometimes easily be dismissed as stories of old, of just things in history. But God, we know the truth that you are the same yesterday, today, and forever. And that what you did through Moses, you can do through us. That God, who you are has not changed. So therefore, what you did in Moses, you want to do through us. You want to use our life to impact others. God, we surrender our life to you, our everything. And we ask the question, what do you want to do with us? How do you want to use us? And God, we are going to begin believing and trusting that in our sacrifice of ourselves to you, our gifting of our lives to you, you're going to use us, our passions, our relationships, and our placement. You're going to use it for your glory and our good. So God, we trust you. This week we're going to ask, how do you want to use us? What do you want us to do? What do you want us to say? Who do you want us to interact with, God? And we're going to trust that you're going to show up in those moments and lead us. Just like you showed up to Moses, we believe you'll show up for us. We love you, Jesus. It's in our pray. Amen. Hey, thanks for being here this morning. As we take our conversations to the lobby, I'm going to ask those, if you're here and you would like someone to pray with you, just stay seated. Our prayer team will come forward, and then they'll come and find you and pray with you. Love you guys. You're dismissed.
It's great. Everything I prayed for didn't come in late. I got all I need and I didn't have to wait. Ask me if you love me, you didn't hesitate. Turning all things new, gray skies blue. Yeah, the church saying, won't he do it? I know he's got my back. That's why I'm singing that. I'm about to have a good day, no matter what they say. It's a good day.